Well, folks, we have a guest today that I've had on a couple of other times. He is a medical doctor. That always excites me. One of the things people sometimes say is, well, are you a doctor? The answer, of course, is no, I'm not, but I relate to doctors. I watch doctors. I read doctors. And I know that we've got several different groups of doctors saying several different things. In this case, the doctor is Dr. Tony Hampton from Chicago. Welcome, Tony, to Beat Diabetes.
Thank you, Dennis. And I just want to say out loud that I learn a ton from my patients and from other people who are not doctors. And in fact, my nurses, when I was in my training, taught me the most about how to deliver babies and things like that. So we all have value to add. So I'm happy that we're all on the same page, trying to accomplish the same thing.
Yeah. Well, that's great to be humble enough to recognize that there are many different ways we can learn and from
Yes.
many different people. We've talked about the kind of direction we want to go in this program, so that's not going to surprise you. But I do want to start with one particular example from my own history, actually, the history of my parents. So let me just give you a surprise question, and then we'll get to some of the ones we've kind of thought about before. The idea is this: my parents both ate the exact same diet. When mom served dinner at night, and we were the traditional American family, we all gathered around the table like Leave It to Beaver and had dinner. There were no cell phones anybody was on. There was no TV going on. Just sat at a table and ate dinner. So they ate the same dinner. Mom didn't fix two dinners or three dinners. It was the same exact meal for all of us. And yet, my mom got a severe case of diabetes that took both her legs and just made her life miserable the last 15, 16 years. My dad, eating the same foods, did not get diabetes, did not have high blood pressure like my mom did, and lived to be 87, basically in good health, all but about the last maybe 9 months of his life. How can we? I mean, I know you didn't know them and you can't get too specific, but just using them as an example, how is it you can have people eating the same foods, living basically the same lifestyle, and yet one gets really bad diabetes, the other, it doesn't even touch them?
I'll look at this through the lens of my training in obesity medicine, and I learned a lot about how we are unique and we have to individualize how we approach things because of that. And it is true that even in my family, there are several family members who struggle with obesity and the consequences of that, where others don't. It's very frustrating for people who sit at the same table and they look at food and they gain weight or end up with diabetes where other people don't. So there are some, basic things about us that make us unique. Some of it is, though, impacted by environment. So if I have a twin who, one lives in New York and the other lives in California, because of that different environment, they may then be impacted differently. But it is also true that some of us have different metabolic rates, and so we may eat something that because our metabolic rate is sluggish compared to the other person, we may also find ourselves struggling with our weight and or therefore increasing our risk for diabetes. So, and even our microbiome, let's just say we hang out with a good friend and because we're hanging out so closely, our microbiome starts to become the same, which is the bacteria in our gut. And when they've done studies on mice and they've taken the microbiome of a thin mice and compare it to a microbiome of a larger mice, if you put that microbiome of a larger mice into that thinner person, they then become obese. So there are so many factors that impact what happens to individuals. Some of it is what you put on the plate. And in this case, we're saying we're eating the same food. When I was growing up and I was a thinner person, I was extremely active. I played tennis from sun up to sundown, and so I just had a different kind of lifestyle compared to some of my peers who may not be doing that. Maybe they're at the pool alley instead and they're not really as active. The stress level that we face can vary. And some people manage stress differently than others. Some people just hold on to everything that's going on in their lives in a way that harms them. Where other people, I tend to be more laid back, so I don't really hold on to stress. So when you start thinking about the various factors that impact us, is so complex, which is why you have to do individual approaches. Otherwise, it's very frustrating. So what I tell individuals is, you know, we can't say definitively that you're going to have a certain outcome because of your family history. However, we do know some things that you can do as an individual that will impact your life in a positive way. So instead of focusing on your the cards you've been dealt, let's focus on doing the things that you can change, which will likely lead to the outcomes you seek. So it's very complicated, but yet I find that when I have a person in the exact same situation you've described, we can get past that by making the changes they need in their lifestyle. And that gives people hope and it gives them a path from which they can, move forward.
Well, that's a great answer. Because I did know my mom and dad. They both passed now, but I can say this much. Mom was always on the plump side. Dad was always on the thin side. Mom liked to snack, and she could never go from one meal to the next without a snack in between. It seems like Dad never snacked, never, the meal. Well, that was his food until the next meal. So there were some differences. Well, Tony, you're going to be hanging out with some of the big dogs in the low carb world. You've got something coming up called the Metabolic Revolution event. And I was looking at some of the names, big guys that I respect, some of them, others I hadn't heard of. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, we're so privileged that on October 13th, we're going to Washington and we're gonna have an opportunity to do a rally. I know we've been doing a lot of rallies because of the elections, both on the Democratic and Republican side. What we're trying to do is get the message out that if 80% of all chronic illnesses are due to poor metabolic health, we should be focused on achieving metabolic health. And Nina Teicholz reached out to me and asked me would I participate, and I graciously accepted. And when you see the likes of Dr. Robert Lustig and, of course, Nina Teicholz, Vinny Tortorich, Dr. Eric Westman, who is one of my heroes. In fact, he's my mentor, and he doesn't even know it yet because he does it the way I like to do it, right? Uh, I love Dr. Georgia Ede, one of our leading psychiatrists who really shows us how we can put some of these mental health conditions into remission as well as Dr. Chris uh, Palmer and an endocrinologist, Dr. Mariana Glant is on the team. So we have a list of people who will have about 5 minutes. And I talk a lot, Dennis, so I'm not sure how I'm going to do it in 5 minutes, but we're going to get in front of that podium in Washington and we're going to share this message of healing. So if anybody who wants to support it, because we are raising money for those who maybe want to go and they can't make it, go to metabolicrevolution.org, check out that wonderful site. And again, we can't stand on the sidelines and watch our families perish when we have a solution. If we didn't have a solution, Dennis, I would be okay. I would just accept that that's our fate. But the moment I started my low carb, achieve metabolic health approach about 12 years or so ago, having been plant based, which wasn't working as well, I've seen miracle after miracle after miracle. And who knew the miracle was right in front of us all along? And a lot of people, I always like that story about how you're trying to get to the other side of the water. And but you're kind of stranded in your boat and you're looking for help and you're asking the Lord to bless you with help. And people keep coming by and they kept saying no to those people because they said they were waiting for help, that God would bring them. Well, guess what? This is an example of the help we're bringing people. And that's why I want to take this message of healing beyond YouTube, beyond a podcast, beyond a conference, and into the mainstream. And the only way you can do that is a grassroots revolution, which is why I'm so excited to participate. And this is just a beginning. As you know, we started the American Diabetes Society under the leadership of Ken Berry, and I'm happy to be part of that board. And we're just trying to get this message out. And I want everybody listening to understand you have to participate too. If you know of some success story, share it. If you're having a success story, share it. We're not going to preach to people, but we're going to at least share that there's another way. So that's why, again, that's why I refer so many people to your channel, because you talk about one of the biggest problems that we face, which is diabetes.
Well, thank you so much. This Metabolic Revolution event, is that going to be online, or will it be online after it's over, or you just have to be
That's a
there or you
great
miss it?
question. I'm not sure it's going to be broadcast. I was not given that information, but I know that it's either going to, but I hope it is, because I think you're right. It's very challenging for everybody to be there. But again, I'm hoping that my guess is that it will be, if not live, it will be available after that. So that's my hope.
Okay, very good. Well, thank you so much for being with us on Beat Diabetes, Dr. Tony. I appreciate you. When I first started out with my Beat Diabetes channel, I managed to get hold of Dr. Sarah Hallberg, who was alive in those days. She's passed on now, but I was going to fly up and see her. I forget even where she lived at the time, and it didn't work out. But at that time, I didn't even know about Zoom. I didn't know you could sit in your own house and talk to people and interview them. But thank the Lord for Zoom and some of the
Yeah,
ways we do it.
because you brought her up, Nina Teicholz actually helped put together a legacy course for in honoring Dr. Sarah Holberg. So I'll share that link with you. It's a 5 to 6 hour course, including the likes of Dr. Ben Bigman and others. And I think that's a free course that we can offer to your audience that honors Dr. Sarah Holberg. She's amazing, and people need to know who she was.
Wow, that's wonderful. I appreciate you mentioning that. God bless you, my friend. See you again soon.
Thank you.
Benedicta has written an autobiography of her life, which you can purchase on Amazon by going to the link in the description under this video. Nobody seeing the happy, friendly Benedicta with the big laugh, as she is today, could ever imagine what she went through in her early years. During her teen years, she suffered virtual slavery and was brutally beaten many times. As she reached adulthood, she went through seasons where she nearly starved and sometimes had to go days with nothing to eat. She's been at the doors of death several times, and once, after lying in a near coma for days, she felt she left her body and saw the beauty of heaven. People who have read this book have been amazed at her life, and some have been so transfixed by her story they read it through in a couple of days, and others have read the whole book through twice. So let me encourage you, get this book. You won't be disappointed.